So I, 31-year-old Audrey, was just sitting on my beat-up leather couch last December, scrolling through Reddit on my phone while ESPN played in the background. One of those boring Sunday afternoons where you're not really watching the game but need something to fill the silence of your empty apartment. Outside, it had started to snow. One of those heavy, silent snowfalls that make the world feel muted, the kind that builds up on window ledges and blurs the streetlights into soft halos. My apartment isn't much, just a one-bedroom in the crappier part of town where the rent is cheap enough that I can save a little each month. The walls are too thin, the neighbors too loud, and the heating never quite works right, but it's mine. I pay for it with my construction job. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills. I've been with the same company for 5 years, working my way up from basic laborer to crew supervisor. My hands are always rough, my back always sore. But there's something satisfying about building something with your own two hands, something office folks will never fully get. At least it pays my bills, and apparently everyone else's too. When my phone lit up with Dad on the screen, I almost didn't answer. The last 3 times he'd called, it was to borrow money for some emergency at the house. First it was the water heater, then property taxes, then some plumbing issue. But family is family, right? That's what I kept telling myself. That's what kept me sending money month after month, even when I should have been saving for my own future. "Hey, what's up?" I answered, muting the TV. "Audrey," my dad said, his voice casual, like we'd just spoken yesterday, when in reality, it had been 3 weeks since I'd heard from any of them. "Listen, about Christmas this year, we think it's better if you don't come." I sat up straight, nearly dropping my phone. The game continued playing on the screen, but all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. "What?" I managed to say, convinced I'd misheard him. He let out that annoyed sigh he's perfected over the years, the one that makes you feel like you're 10 years old again, asking too many questions about why the sky is blue. "Megan's having a rough time lately. You know how sensitive she gets. All that tension between you two, it's just easier for everyone if you sit this one out. My sister Megan, of course, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, even when she was absolutely wrecking everything. She's 2 years older than me, but somehow still treated like she's made of glass." "Let me get this straight," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're uninviting me from Christmas, family Christmas, because Megan is having a rough time?" "Don't make this a big deal, Audrey," Dad replied, impatient. I could practically see him waving his hand dismissively, the way he always did when I brought up anything that mattered. "It's just one day. You'll survive." That's when I felt something snap inside me, like a wire stretched too tight for too long. All the resentment, all the frustration, all the times I'd bitten my tongue for the sake of family peace, it all surged to the surface. "One day," I repeated, my voice rising, despite my efforts to control it. "And what about the $7,000 I've paid toward your mortgage this year? Does that mean nothing? Am I just good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to sit at your table?" There was a long, awkward silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing, probably trying to come up with a way to manipulate me into backing down like he always did. Finally, he cleared his throat. "That's different. You offered to help out. Don't throw that in our faces now." I stood up and began pacing my small living room, the floor creaking beneath me. 3 steps one way, 3 steps back. The room suddenly felt too small, too tight, like the walls were closing in. "I've been paying your mortgage for 2 years. $7,000 this year alone. Ever since Megan's dumb tech startup crashed and burned, and you bailed her out instead of making her face consequences like a real adult. But sure, I offered to do it." "We appreciate it, Audrey," he said in that condescending tone that made me want to scream. The same tone he used when I told him I was going into construction instead of college. "But this isn't about money. It's about family. Megan needs a stress-free environment right now. She's in a very vulnerable place." I walked to my window, watching the snow pile up below. My reflection stared back at me. Tired eyes, wind-chapped skin, the look of someone who'd been taken for granted far too long. Behind me, on my coffee table, sat a stack of unpaid bills I'd been putting off because I'd sent my parents their mortgage money first, like I always did. "Family," I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Funny how I'm family when you need my paycheck, but not when it's time to sit around the Christmas tree. Funny how Megan's vulnerable place matters more than the fact that I've been breaking my back to keep a roof over all your heads. You're being dramatic, he started, but I was done. Done being interrupted, done being dismissed, done being the family ATM. No, Dad, you made your choice. Enjoy your Megan-friendly Christmas, but don't expect another dime from me. Not tomorrow, not next month, not ever again. I hung up before he could respond, tossing my phone onto the couch like it burned my hand. My heart was pounding, hands shaking, with rage and something else, maybe relief. For once, I'd stood up for myself. I grabbed my laptop from the side table and sat back down, opening up my banking app. It was time to make a decision that would change everything. Let me tell you about my perfect sister, Megan, 29, honor roll student, college volleyball star, homecoming queen, mom's precious angel, and dad's brilliant girl. The kind of sister who borrowed your stuff without asking and acted like you were the jerk when you wanted it back. The kind who got a car for her 16th birthday while I got a watch. The one who never worked a summer job because she needed to focus on her studies while I was mowing lawns at 14. Our childhood bedrooms told the whole story. Hers was plastered with ribbons, medals, and trophies. Mine had one lonely participation award from Little League, which Dad called a good start with that disappointed look he reserved just for me. 2 years ago, Megan quit her stable marketing job to launch some revolutionary fitness app called Fit Focus, or something equally cringe. Swore up and down it would make millions. Mom and Dad ate it up like gospel. She's so entrepreneurial, Mom gushed on our rare phone calls. That's my girl. Taking risks, Dad beamed during family dinners. I still got invited back then. They didn't just give her emotional support. Oh no. They remortgaged their nearly paid-off house to give her $8,000 in startup funds. No hesitation, no questions asked. When I wanted to go to trade school instead of college? That's short-sighted, Audrey. You're wasting your potential. When I needed $2,000 for my certification courses? We're not made of money. But Megan's half-baked app idea? Here's our life savings and the deed to our house. The app launched. It crashed. It burned. Hard. The whole thing unraveled in 3 months. Server issues, design flaws, zero marketing strategy. Turns out her brilliant vision was basically an Instagram filter and a calorie counter buried in a glitchy mess. She hadn't even tested it properly before launch. Why would she? Nothing had ever been hard for her, not once. Suddenly, Mom and Dad were on the hook for a massive mortgage they couldn't afford. Dad's postal worker salary and Mom's part-time receptionist gig didn't cut it. They were going to lose the house. The house I grew up in. The house where, despite everything, I still had memories that meant something. And guess who stepped up? Me, Audrey. The disappointment. The one who wasted her potential on construction. The one who wasn't good enough for their table, but good enough to pay their mortgage. I started sending money every month, $583 a pop. $7,000 this year alone. Money that came straight out of my backbreaking work. Meanwhile, Megan posted selfies from her healing retreats and showed off her new MacBook Pro, the one she needed for her job search. Sure. I didn't complain. I just sent the money, picked up extra shifts, worked weekends, skipped vacations, drove my 10-year-old car with 170,000 miles, and prayed it wouldn't break down. Lived in my crappy apartment with bad heating and neighbors who screamed at each other through paper walls, all while Megan lived rent-free in their basement, raided their fridge, used their Netflix, and talked about her next big idea that was definitely going to work this time. You know what the worst part was? She never once said thank you. Never acknowledged that her failure had real-world consequences, ones I was carrying. At Thanksgiving, back when I was still welcome, she had the nerve to ask me why I didn't get a real job so I could afford a better car. I nearly choked on my turkey. And now? Now I wasn't even welcome for Christmas. The one day of the year when even the most broken families pretend to like each other for a few hours. The one day I actually looked forward to, because it meant a decent meal I didn't have to cook, and the illusion of belonging somewhere. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the joint account I'd set up for their mortgage. My name was on it because Dad couldn't handle online banking, and Mom just smiled and said, "You're so good with money, Audrey." There it was, $7,000 gone this year. Every dollar earned in cold, wind, heat, sweat, and splinters. I navigated to the automatic payment settings and clicked Cancel All Scheduled Payments. My finger hovered just for a second, then pressed Confirm. All scheduled payments have been canceled. I didn't stop there. I transferred the money I'd set aside for January's payment back into my personal account. Then I closed the laptop with a satisfied snap. For the first time in 2 years, I could breathe. Let's see how vulnerable Megan feels when the bank starts sending foreclosure notices. The next couple of weeks went by like normal, except I was suddenly $583 richer every month. Amazing how much breathing room that gave a woman. I even treated myself to a new pair of work boots, heavy-duty ones with extra arch support. The kind that makes a real difference when you're on your feet for 10 hours a day. A small luxury, but it felt monumental. The snow outside kept piling up. December in Michigan doesn't mess around. Temperatures dropped to the teens. Wind chill made it feel like -10. I kept showing up to work sites, swinging hammers, running saws, coming home with sawdust in my boots and concrete dust in my lungs. The cold made everything harder. Tools didn't cooperate. Equipment was sluggish, and my fingers stayed numb despite thick gloves. But I didn't mind it so much anymore, because every dollar I earned now stayed with me. No phone calls from the family yet, just the steady rhythm of my own life, finally under my own control. Friday night, I met up with my buddy Chris at our usual pizza joint. We'd been friends since we were dumb kids, sneaking cigarettes behind the high school gym. He's a plumber now. Decent money, especially during Michigan winters when everyone's pipes freeze and burst. That night, the place was packed with the Friday crowd. Families, couples, loud groups of friends. Classic rock hummed through the speakers, the smell of melted cheese and garlic in the air. Chris slid a soda across the table to me and gave me a look. "You look different," he said. "Less, I don't know, hunched, like you're not carrying a piano on your back anymore." I took a long sip and finally let it all out. Dad's call, Megan's drama, being uninvited from Christmas after paying their mortgage for 2 straight years. Chris froze mid-bite, his half-eaten pizza slice suspended in the air. "You're kidding. They actually uninvited you? After you've been paying their mortgage?" I nodded. "Yep, so I canceled the payments. They don't know yet." He threw his head back and laughed so hard the table next to us looked over. "Holy crap, Audrey. That's cold as ice." "They'll find out at the end of the month, right after their perfect family Christmas. Should be a fun surprise." He raised his glass. "To not being a doormat anymore." We clinked cups. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. "You know they're going to freak out, right?" Chris said, wiping grease from his beard. "Like nuclear-level meltdown." I shrugged. "Let them. I'm done caring." He was right. Of course he was. But there's something about family, some dumb, ingrained sense of duty that keeps you trying long after you should have walked away. The days ticked by. I bought myself a new TV for Christmas. 55 inches, smart everything, sleek as hell. Why not? It was my money now. I even grabbed one of those fake Christmas trees from Walmart, set it up in the corner of my apartment, and wrapped a couple of presents to put underneath. Stuff I'd bought for myself, sure, but it still made the place feel festive. If I wasn't invited to their Christmas, I'd make my own. Meanwhile, none of them had called. Not Mom, to check if I was okay. Not Dad, to apologize. Definitely not Megan, to say thank you for the 2 years I kept a roof over her ungrateful head. Just silence. And for once, that silence felt good. I went to the grocery store and splurged on ingredients for a real Christmas dinner. Not the dry turkey and lumpy mashed potatoes Mom always made, but a nice steak, roasted potatoes, fresh green beans. The kind of meal I never bothered cooking just for myself. This year, I would. While loading my cart, I ran into Mrs. Peterson, our old neighbor from childhood. She looked surprised to see me. "Audrey, dear, getting ready for Christmas with your parents? I just saw your mother yesterday, buying enough food to feed an army as usual." I forced a polite smile. "Actually, I'm not going this year, just doing something quiet at home." Her face fell. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just a change of plans." As I walked away, I pictured them setting up the usual decorations. Mom hanging stockings, one for each of them, none for me. Dad swearing at the tangled tree lights. Megan curled on the couch, scrolling through Instagram instead of helping. I added a tub of ice cream to my cart and smiled. They had no idea what was coming. The first message came 3 days before Christmas. I was at Home Depot grabbing supplies for a side job I'd picked up to stay busy during that dead week between Christmas and New Year's when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Audrey, honey, the bank called about the mortgage payment. They said it didn't go through. Is everything okay with the account? I slid my phone back into my pocket without answering. Let them sweat. 2 hours later, Dad called. I sent it straight to voicemail. His message was far less gentle. Audrey, what's going on with the mortgage payment? Call me back right away. I didn't. Then came Megan's text. Of course, she was always the last to realize there was a problem, but the first to make demands. Audrey, Mom and Dad are freaking out about the mortgage. Fix it. Now. I was sitting on my new couch, watching my new TV, eating the pizza I'd ordered as a treat. I finally decided to respond. Not to her, but to Mom. Sorry, can't help with the mortgage anymore. Tight budget. Christmas is expensive. Hope you understand. I hit send. The same kind of casual dismissal they'd always used on me. Her reply came back within minutes. But we're counting on that money, Audrey. We can't make the payment without you. I took another bite of pizza, let the cheese stretch and snap, and texted back. That's tough. Maybe Megan can help out. She's living there rent-free anyway. Then I silenced my phone and turned back to the nature documentary about penguins I was watching. Fascinating stuff. The next morning, I had 8 missed calls. 3 voicemails from Dad, each one angrier than the last. The final one was a proper explosion. Audrey, you can't just stop paying with no warning. The bank says we're already late. Call me back now. Megan had sent a barrage of texts, each more hysterical than the last. WTF, Audrey? Answer your phone. You're ruining everything on purpose. Mom is crying because of you. Good. Let her cry. Let them all feel what it's like to be the ones nobody gives a damn about. I finally texted Mom again. Sorry, already spent the money on Christmas gifts for myself. Good luck with the payment. Then I blocked all 3 of them. Christmas was 2 days away, and for the first time in years, I was looking forward to spending it alone. That afternoon, I ran into my neighbor Jim in the parking lot. Good guy. Works nights as a security guard. Always brings in my packages if they're sitting outside too long. Hey, you're looking cheerful, he said as he helped me carry the new coffee machine I'd splurged on for myself. Hot date for Christmas? I laughed. Nah, just treating myself this year. Family-free holiday. Lucky you, he grunted, maneuvering the box through my doorway. I've got the in-laws coming. 3 days of my father-in-law criticizing my wall mounts and my mother-in-law reorganizing my entire spice rack. We got the box inside, and I handed him a couple of sodas from my fridge as thanks. As he was leaving, he turned back. Hey, if you're on your own for Christmas, why don't you come over for dinner? Shannon always makes way too much food. No pressure, just if you want to. I was surprised by the offer. It was the first genuine invitation I'd had in a long time. Thanks, man, I said. I'll think about it. And I did. It was nice to know someone actually wanted me around for Christmas, not just my bank account. Christmas morning came with another thick blanket of snow. I slept in until 10, something I never get to do with my work schedule. No alarm, no job site, no obligations, just peace. I made myself a full breakfast. Bacon, eggs, the fancy ground coffee I'd picked up, turned on a Christmas music channel for no other reason than because I could. Around noon, someone started pounding on my door. The kind of pounding that means business. Not Jim's friendly knock or a package delivery. Through the peephole, I saw Dad. Standing there in his winter coat, face red from either cold or fury, probably both. His breath came out in little clouds in the hallway air. I opened the door but left the chain on. Merry Christmas, I said, savoring the way his eyes narrowed. What the hell do you think you're doing? He barked, voice echoing down the hall. The bank called again yesterday. We're late on the payment. I leaned against the doorframe. Yeah, that tends to happen when you don't pay your bills. You know we can't afford it without you, he snapped, trying to peer past the door into my apartment. His eyes landed on the tree, the wrapped presents, the big new TV. Funny how that works, I said calmly. I can't afford to help people who don't consider me family enough to invite to Christmas. His face darkened even more. This is childish, Audrey. This is about our house. Your mother is beside herself. Should have thought of that before you kicked me out of Christmas, I replied with a shrug. How's Megan handling the stress? Still feeling vulnerable? This isn't about Megan. It's always about Megan, I cut him off. Even now, you're not here to apologize, not here to say I was missed. You're here to demand money, because to you, that's all I've ever been, an ATM. He changed tactics, softening his voice. Audrey, please. We'll lose the house. We're already behind. Not my problem anymore, I said and closed the door. He kept pounding, kept yelling, but eventually gave up and left. I heard his car start, the engine struggling before finally turning over. I went back to my breakfast, turned up the music, and poured another cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. My phone lit up with a text from an unfamiliar number, but I recognized the tone right away. It was Mom, using Megan's phone to get around the block. Audrey, please, we need you. We're family. I stared at the message for a long time, then I typed back. Families don't uninvite members from Christmas just to protect the golden child's feelings. Families don't take $7,000 and then throw the person who gave it away like garbage. Merry Christmas. Then I blocked Megan's number too, and I spent the rest of Christmas Day in beautiful, peaceful solitude. I cooked my steak, perfectly medium rare. The potatoes came out crisp on the outside, fluffy inside. I used a real plate and a cloth napkin for once. No takeout containers. No paper towels, just me, a proper meal, and silence that didn't feel lonely. For dessert, I'd bought myself a mini apple pie, warmed it up in the oven, and topped it with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. After dinner, I opened the presents I'd wrapped for myself. New headphones, a couple of video games I'd been putting off buying, a nice watch to replace the cheap one that had died last month. Little things, but things I used to deny myself because $583 always went to them first. I was trying on the headphones, testing the sound quality, when there was another knock at the door. Softer this time. I peeked through the peephole. It was Mom. I ignored it. Turned up the volume on my headphones and leaned back on the couch. She knocked for a while, then gave up. Later, I found a card slid under my door. It was one of those generic store-bought Christmas cards. Glittery script. Blank inside, except for a signature. Love, Mom and Dad. No apology, no mention of what had happened. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just a meaningless card they probably bought in bulk. I dropped it in the trash without a second thought. Around 8 p.m., Jim texted, "Hey, still got cookies and board games if you're not busy." I figured, why not? So I went. Spent the evening with his family, playing Uno, eating too many cookies, and watching their youngest son build elaborate towers out of Jenga blocks. His kids were actually pretty fun. The 10-year-old was obsessed with building things, so we talked about concrete, rebar, and structural weight distribution. You know, nerd stuff. Shannon, Jim's wife, was warm and funny. She never made me feel like a pity case or an intruder, just part of the group. As I walked home that night, the snow had finally stopped. The air was cold and sharp and clear. My boots crunched with every step. The world was still. And for a family-free Christmas, it hadn't been bad at all. Hey. The week between Christmas and New Year's was when everything really hit the fan. I got up early on the 26th, headed to that basement drywall job I'd picked up. 6 hours of measuring, cutting, and hauling sheets through narrow hallways. My arms ached. My hoodie was soaked with sweat despite the freezing temps outside. When I finally made it home, covered in dust and ready to crash, Chris was waiting in his truck in the parking lot, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "Dude," he said, hopping out, "you've got to hear this." I raised an eyebrow and unlocked my door. "What now?" "My cousin Tommy, you remember him? Lives down the street from your parents." "Yeah?" He followed me inside, flopping down on my couch. "They're in full-on panic mode. Your dad's been going around asking everyone in the family for loans. Your mom cried at your Aunt Lisa's house yesterday. And Megan, apparently she's been throwing massive fits." I grabbed 2 sodas from the fridge and tossed him one. "How bad?" He grinned wider. "Bad. They missed the payment completely. The bank sent a foreclosure notice. And get this, your dad had to cancel the cable and the internet to scrape together cash." "Wait, seriously?" Chris nodded, cracking open his soda. "No Netflix. Megan's going ballistic." I sat back in my recliner, another Christmas present to myself, and took a long drink, trying not to laugh. It felt good. Not petty, not cruel, just justified. "Your cousin say anything else?" I asked. "Oh yeah," he said. "Best part. Your sister finally got a job." I choked on my drink. "You're joking." He laughed. "Cashier, at Kroger." Now I was really laughing. Chris continued. "Apparently she cried the whole first day because someone yelled at her about expired coupons." I shook my head, a strange mix of satisfaction and pity settling in my chest. Megan had never worked retail. Never had her feet throb after an 8-hour shift. Never been yelled at by a stranger who thought you controlled corporate policy. Welcome to the working world, Megan, I muttered. It's not all startup dreams and Instagram filters out here. That night, another text came through, from yet another unknown number. This time my aunt. Audrey, honey, your parents are in real trouble. They might lose the house. Can't you help them? Whatever happened between you, they're still your family. I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. Ask Megan to help. She's lived there rent-free for 2 years while I paid $7,000 toward their mortgage. They uninvited me from Christmas because I made her uncomfortable. They made their choice. No response after that. The next day, I was at the gym trying to burn off the rage and drywall dust when my phone rang again. Unknown number. I picked it up, breathing heavy between sets. Hello? It was my mother. Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. Fragile, breaking. The bank, she whispered. They're threatening foreclosure if we don't catch up on payments. We don't have the money. I sat up on the bench, wiping my forehead with my towel. I wasn't even angry, just exhausted. That sounds like a problem for you, Dad, and Megan to figure out, I said flatly. Please, she begged, clearly crying now. We'll lose the house. We have nowhere to go. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. You should have thought about that before you chose Megan over me. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, I snapped, cutting her off. 2 years, I said. I paid your mortgage for 2 years. Extra shifts, weekend work, skipped vacations, skipped meals sometimes. And the one time, I wanted to be included in a family holiday. I get told I'm not welcome because the golden child's feelings might get hurt. The silence that followed was only broken by her soft, stuttering sobs. Audrey, she finally whispered, we're sorry. We made a mistake. Please, help us. I closed my eyes. It was too late. I can't, I said quietly, and I won't. Then I ended the call. New Year's Eve came, and Jim invited me over again. Just a small get-together. Him, Shannon, another couple from the building, and me. We played cards, ate too much spinach dip, and watched the ball drop on TV. At midnight, we toasted with sparkling cider, and I found myself actually smiling. Laughing. My phone buzzed with another text, my aunt again. Your parents got an eviction warning. 30 days to pay or get out. Please, Audrey, they have nowhere to go. I showed the message to Jim, who just shook his head. Damn, family drama at its finest, huh? Yeah, I said, putting the phone down. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Shannon looked over at me with that gentle, maternal warmth she always had. Family can be the worst sometimes, but also the best. It's complicated. I nodded, but didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to forgive them. Maybe I never would be. Later that night, walking back to my apartment, I realized I'd spent more time with Jim and his family over the past week than I had with my own in the past year. These people barely knew me, but they were kind, present, real. Maybe family wasn't about blood after all. Maybe it was about who actually gave a damn about you, not what you could give them. January dragged by, cold and merciless, but for once I didn't mind. I kept busy with work, saved the money that used to go to their mortgage, started going to a weekly poker night with some of the guys on my crew, even bought myself some new clothes. Not fancy, just stuff that fit right and didn't have holes in it. My life was settling into something that felt like peace, like mine. There was even someone new. Emma, she worked at the coffee shop near my apartment. I'd been chatting with her for months, just casual stuff while she made my latte. Then one morning, just after New Year's, she wrote her number on my cup. Nothing serious yet, but it felt good, like maybe there was something else out there besides disappointment and debt. Then, on one brutally cold Sunday morning, someone knocked on my door. A heavy, reluctant knock. When I opened it, I froze. All three of them, Mom, Dad, and Megan, stood in the hallway. They looked like they hadn't slept in days. Mom's eyes were red and puffy. Dad looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. And Megan, precious, perfect Megan, had dark circles under her eyes and was wearing her Kroger uniform under her coat. Can we come in? Dad asked, his voice hollow, all the arrogance drained out of it. I hesitated, then stepped aside. They entered silently, taking in the clean apartment, the new TV, the repainted walls, one of my recent weekend projects. It was clear I was doing just fine without them. Nice place, Megan muttered, resentment flashing in her eyes. I didn't offer them seats. What do you want? Dad cleared his throat. The bank, they're foreclosing. We have 2 weeks to get out of the house. I folded my arms. And? Mom's voice cracked. We can't afford an apartment with the credit hit we're taking. No one will rent to us. I looked each of them in the eye. What does that have to do with me? Megan suddenly burst into tears. Not the soft, manipulative kind she used to deploy to get out of trouble. No. This was ugly, raw, sobbing, the kind that made her mascara smear and her shoulders shake. We fucked up, okay? She cried. Is that what you want to hear? We fucked up. Cacked up. I'm sorry. Mom looked shocked by her language. Dad just stared at the floor. We were wrong, Dad said quietly. About Christmas. About everything. We took you for granted. I laughed, short, bitter. Took me for granted? No. You used me. Like an ATM. For 2 years. Then tossed me aside the second I wasn't convenient. Mom's voice wavered. We know. We were awful to you. I turned to Megan. And you, queen of the castle, nothing to say? She sniffled and wiped her nose on her sleeve. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. I've been working at Kroger, she said, like that explained everything. People are so mean. My feet hurt all the time. I only make $400 a week. I stared at her. Welcome to the real world, Megan. The world I've been living in while you played girl boss with Mom and Dad's money. Then sat on your ass while I paid the price. I know, she whispered, fresh tears streaming down her face. I was spoiled, entitled, selfish. I never thanked you. I never even thought about what you were doing for us. Dad stepped forward. We're not here to ask for money, Audrey. That surprised me. Then what are you here for? Forgiveness, Mom said. And a place to stay. Just until we get back on our feet. I blinked at them. Then I laughed, and laughed harder. You want to live here, with me, in my one-bedroom apartment? Dad nodded slowly. We have nowhere else to go. I shook my head in disbelief. Let me get this straight. You uninvited me from Christmas because I make Megan uncomfortable. You took my money for 2 years without a single thank you, and now, after I cut you off, after you have to deal with the consequences of your choices, you want to move in with me? They looked at each other, then back at me. We have nowhere else to go, Mom repeated, as if that changed anything. I walked to the window, staring out at the snow-covered parking lot below. For 2 years, I'd been at their mercy, working myself to exhaustion for people who didn't even want me at Christmas dinner. Now they were at my mercy, and they knew it. I turned back to face them. No, the word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Dad blinked. No? No, I repeated. You can't stay here. Not now. Not ever. But where will we go? Mom whispered, fresh tears already forming. I shrugged. That's not my problem anymore. Megan stepped forward, pleading. Please, Audrey. I'll sleep on the floor. I'll pay rent. I'll do anything. I raised an eyebrow. You mean like you should have been doing for the past 2 years? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Too late, I said. Dad's face hardened. So that's it? You're just going to throw your family out on the street? Family, I echoed, narrowing my eyes. You stopped being my family the moment you decided I wasn't good enough to sit at your Christmas table. You didn't want a daughter. You wanted a paycheck. I walked to the door and opened it. I think we're done here. They didn't move. So I stood there, waiting. Please, Audrey, Mom said one more time. Reconsider. We're begging you. I looked her in the eye. It feels awful, doesn't it? To beg someone for help and be turned away. To be treated like you're disposable. They said nothing. Maybe now you understand how I felt. One by one, they filed out. Megan was last. Her Kroger name tag caught the hallway light as she passed. Where will you go? I asked, not out of concern, but morbid curiosity. Dad mumbled, Your mom's coworker said we can stay in her garage for a few nights. After that, we don't know. I nodded once. Good luck with that. I shut the door behind them and locked it. Then I exhaled. A long, deep, soul-cleansing breath. For 2 years, I'd carried them, paid their bills, covered their failures, been the responsible one while they coddled Megan and drained me dry. And now? Now they were gone. Their mess was theirs to deal with. And I was free. I closed the door behind them and just stood there for a moment. The hallway fell quiet. No more crying, no more pleading, just silence. And peace. I walked back into my living room. The one I'd paid for, furnished, decorated. The one they'd never set foot in until they needed something. I looked around. My tree still stood in the corner, the lights glowing softly. My gift sat beneath it, opened and used. Reminders that I mattered to me, even when no one else thought I did. I sat down on the couch, picked up the new headphones I'd gotten myself, and smiled as I slid them on. I put on some soft jazz, something mellow, something that didn't demand anything from me, and I just sat there, finally still. A few minutes later, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Emma, the barista from the coffee shop near my job. Kind, funny, always wrote something sweet on my cups. A few weeks ago, she wrote her number on one. I'd been meaning to text her, so I did. Hey, it's Audrey, the construction girl who drinks too much espresso. Hope you had a peaceful holiday. Want to grab coffee sometime? I hit send before I could overthink it. I wasn't sure what would come of it, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. The next morning, the sun was already up when I woke. I didn't have to rush. No frantic calls, no guilt hovering over my head. I made breakfast, the real kind. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit. I sipped coffee while reading the news on my phone like I was someone with no fires to put out. At work, I showed up early. One of the guys cracked a joke about me being chipper. I laughed along with him, because I really was. That night, I went to the gym. Not because I needed to escape, but because I felt good in my body, strong, capable. When I got home, there was a package at my door, those boots I'd ordered. Another small reward, another piece of my life that now belonged to me. I remembered something Dad said once, years ago, when I told him I wanted to go into trades instead of a university program like Megan. That's not real success, Audrey. You'll never get anywhere with a job like that. I looked down at my calloused hands, at the apartment I'd built, sustained, protected, and laughed out loud. Not real success? I'd survived their ungratefulness, their neglect, their betrayal. And I was still standing. No, I was thriving. And I wasn't done yet.